Well, Arvo Pärt has been a friend of the family as long as I remember. I remember being a very small boy and Arvo Pärt would come to our house, very close friends with my father. And so as I grew up and became a musician, of course I took over the mission of playing Arvo Pärt's music, and the rest of the world has obviously discovered Arvo Pärt and embraced his music. So I think he undoubtedly is one of the most performed composers, living composers today. Now that he's turning 80, it's sort of an unprecedented celebration all over the world, from Nordic countries to places in Central Europe, to Asia, to obviously Japan is a big follower of Arvo Pärt. So it was very natural for us to create a weekend of Arvo Pärt's music. What's interesting is that we are combining pretty much music from all the periods, from the early, rather dodecaphonic, and I wouldn't say dodecaphonic, but rather hard-hitting. One could call it sort of a Soviet realism in one way, and then this Tintinabuli period, which has produced some of the greatest pieces like Cantus in memory of Benjamin Britten and Tabula Rasa and so on. And then some of the very last works, so some of the works that he just wrote within the last years, which are still different from everything else he has written. So it's a kind of an overview of everything that he has done, and a lot of that music is new to the Orchestre de Paris, and Arvo Pärt himself is coming here to oversee the whole process and be present at all the rehearsals, all the discussions and coachings. So it's really a very major happening in Paris music life. Orchestra has met Arvo Pärt once before. 2 years ago we commissioned a piece from him and premiered it in Salle Pleyel. It was called Silhouette, homage to Eiffel, and it was a very interesting experience seeing Arvo Pärt interacting with the French orchestra, with French musicians, and it was a very successful premiere, very well received. But I think that was probably the last time Pärt was played here by this orchestra, and now we have 2 full programs of Arvo Pärt in September. Every composer in Estonia who has written something after Arvo Pärt, either willingly or unwillingly, consciously or subconsciously, has somehow been influenced by Arvo Pärt. His music, not only because his music is universally accepted and because it's so popular, but because it certainly has some kind of a new direction, a direction towards simplicity, towards clarity, towards silence, calm, all the things that new music was kind of looking down upon. And the idea of creating new music, even to this day here in this country, often is associated with very, very complex ideas and layers of very complex technical and sound combinations. What was interesting about Arvo Pärt is that when all of that was going on in Europe, he sort of took a step back and found silence, which was a courageous move anyway, because it was not immediately accepted, but it was something that has proven to be very right, the direction, because we have so much noise and so much information in our life that sometimes just this moment of silence or moment of reflection, just one sound placed in the right place, is something that we need, and something that actually is essential for our existence. The challenges to play Arvo Pärt music are many, because the styles vary from the early Pärt, which is very technically demanding and you know, polyphonic and so on, and music now which is quite spare and quite bare, and we as today's performers find it difficult, because we are not anymore living in a world where we could easily enjoy just one sound. It's hard for us to know sometimes what to do with this music, and that's why it's so useful when the composer comes and says, just let it happen, let it be. And I find that in Arvo Pärt's music also the very important part is the type of sound you're making, the quality of the sound that is not always the same as one would associate with the romantic music, where it's a kind of intense and very rich, and sometimes making a kind of a beautiful tone, understanding the context of where the sound belongs is sometimes not so easy. You know, it's interesting because this mysticism and all of that, on one hand, is there in his music, and Estonians, yes, there are some some thoughts that there is a sort of mystic, almost minimal type of music that comes from the Baltics. Actually, it's more a marketing issue, because in our world we need to find a way to categorize things. You know, this is just like in rock music. You can have, you know, heavy metal or a techno, or you can have you know, classic rock or whatever. There are so many different. There's a need to classify and label things, and so I never found his music particularly looking into sort of mystic side, but it is a religious. There is a religious side to his music. Not all of it, not all of the pieces are religious. I think that we somehow intuitively, if we feel that music is slow and simple, somehow we think it's mystical. But actually, it is just peace. It's something that's within ourselves, and depends on the context. I think he has different pieces in different dealing with different subject matters. A lot of it is religious, that's for sure. The dilemma of anybody who was born in Soviet Union, and anybody who is a creative person, and especially people who are writing books or writing music, in other words, creating something new, there was always a fine line which they need to be aware of, because if you step over the line, the consequences could be very, very serious. And so the sort of a Sovietic censorship and the kind of, not even censorship so much, but this sort of a direction. You have to go a certain direction, you have to do certain things. You're not allowed to do something else. And so that obviously has an immediate reaction from artists. So, you know, the very first piece that Arvo Pärt wrote for the orchestra, very first piece, was called Necrologue. I mean, what kind of a young man would write a piece called Necrologue as a first orchestral piece? Obviously, it had a certain political message. It had a certain dissatisfaction with the system, feeling uncomfortable within that environment, and so it was quite interesting how he was sort of a hard-hitting and rather rebellious young man, and then slowly he realized that that fight is not worth his time. It's not it's not worth anybody's time actually. So he took a certain time off and sort of found an entirely different internal music, which was important to him, that was speaking to him, and that actually found so much resonance in the world that people right now are using this music in films, in all kinds of media. The Tintinabuli style was already starting to happen when he was still in Soviet Union. He was still in Soviet Union. In fact, the style, the Tintinabuli, already started there, but then it evolved as he moved away from Soviet Union, and obviously a certain protest that was there in a young man in the beginning is not there anymore, because somehow you feel that he has found a certain peace. One other interesting thing I'd like to mention is that in this same program, in the second one of the Arvo Pärt programs, we have also commissioned a piece by a friend of mine who is a very upcoming and important Estonian composer, Erkki Sven Tüür. Erkki Sven Tüür is obviously the next in line in Estonia, and he has written us a new piece. We have commissioned from him a new piece, which will also be part of this Pärt weekend. So there is a little bit of not only Arvo Pärt, but also a little bit of an Estonian overview of what actually is happening in musical life of Estonia.